Hi, I'm Simon and welcome to this 40th vlog, and one that is, as often, long overdue. I couldn't believe it when I looked on YouTube today and realised that the last vlog I'd made on this channel is more than a year old, and the oldest video is almost a year old. So I honestly thought I made something back in September or October time, but that's not the case. It's been a long time. Well, I say the last video because obviously I uploaded one yesterday, and that was the one where I talked about the unfortunate passing of little Bella the cat. And I think I'll talk a little bit about that again, just in case you haven't seen it. But what I'm going to do in this video is talk to you about what I've been doing in the last year, the changes that have happened in my life, and also, well, more importantly, what you are here to listen to, I guess, is talk about video gaming. So I'll talk a bit about the games that I've been playing, but also about the stuff that I want to be playing when it comes out at the end of the year. So I've got my trusty iPad Pro with me, which I reviewed in a previous video and I still really love. I've written some notes. I've got Berman down here, just out of shot. I'm sure he'll make himself known at some point. He does like to sit on people's laps when they're here. So, let's start. I'll just mention briefly about the last video I made. Unfortunately, a year ago yesterday, my cat Bella passed away. So I made a little video about that, and I mentioned in there that I think part of the reason that I haven't made any vlog videos is because I didn't want to talk about her death. At least that was to begin with. Soon, you know, relatively soon after it happened. I made a couple more videos after that, but they were just tech review videos, and in a way they kind of helped me to focus on other things, which was nice. But now I want to get back into making YouTube videos with some sort of regularity. I mean, this channel, those of you who've been watching it for a long time will know regular uploads is not something I've been able to stick to for any length of time, and I'm not going to claim that that's going to happen now. But I do want to sort of, especially with the upcoming change of console generation that's happening and new technology that's coming out. Of course, there are things that I want to talk about, to share my thoughts with you guys and hear what you have to say. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But well, what other reasons are there for not making videos? Well, just there have been some sort of changes in my life about where I've been living and what I've been doing that have interrupted YouTube, and I just haven't really felt in the mood, I guess, to be making videos. One of the things that happened was, I spoke about this, I think, in a previous video, that my wife and I were planning to move to Lincolnshire. We were living in Portsmouth when we came back from the UAE. We lived there for about 10 months, and it's a nice city, Portsmouth, but I don't think either of us really wanted to be there, and we couldn't afford to live in the part of the city that, or in a manner to which we would like to live. You know, there are nice parts of Portsmouth for sure, but way out of our price range. So we decided to look around the country to other places that are a bit more affordable to buy a home. I mean, that was, I guess, the main reason for wanting to come back to the UK, was to settle down and get a home. So we'd looked around Lincolnshire because my wife's elder sister, or eldest sister, she has two older sisters, had also been looking for a place to live, looking to get sort of the best value for money. She wanted to get a larger home, and Lincolnshire is a really good place for that. And they recommended to us a town called Louth, which is sort of northern Lincolnshire, just outside the Wolds, a lovely market town, because they knew that was the sort of thing that we were looking for, a sort of smallish town with a sort of older, quaint feel to it. And Louth definitely ticked a lot of those boxes. We had a look around, found a flat that we thought would be a really good first purchase, and got into the sort of process of buying that flat. Unfortunately, that fell through because the owner of the flat couldn't provide enough information about the management of the flat, potential repairs that were coming up on the flat, and it seemed, and the price was really quite low for the flat as well. They dropped it quite a lot, and we just didn't feel good about taking on the potential risk. A good friend of ours is a conveyancing solicitor, and he did a lot of digging into it and ended up advising us that it wouldn't be the best purchase for us. So unfortunately we had to pull out of that, and we were thinking about, okay, well, let's rent somewhere in Louth. But once we kind of stopped to think about it, because we were both out of work at the time, or between jobs, my wife, she got an offer for a job in Leeds, being a manager at one of the schools there. And so we decided, okay, well, let's move to Yorkshire. And well, that's where we are now, North Yorkshire. And it's a lovely, lovely part of the country. And I'm happy that we've moved here. It's again, another move to another place where we don't have a big network of friends. And unfortunately, I still don't have a job. One of the things I decided to do coming back to the UK was to get out of EFL teaching, and I've actually decided to retrain in something completely different. For many years I've wanted to do software development, and I think I talked myself out of it, saying that I wouldn't be able to do it. I tried coding in the past when I was doing my A-levels many years ago, and I think learning Pascal at the time put me off coding, and I'd gone in a completely different direction. But I decided, okay, I'm going to do it, and found a course up here in Leeds that had a face-to-face web development course. And I went through the sort of process of applying for the course and doing the pre-course work, learning a bit about JavaScript, and found that I really enjoyed it and I had some aptitude for it. Unfortunately, it wasn't terrible, but I started the course, and a week and a day after it started, lockdown happened. And so this face-to-face course that I'd borrowed a lot of money to be able to join was no longer face-to-face. It became an online course, and I was a bit worried, thinking I've paid all this money and it's not going to deliver what I was expecting it to. Well, as it turned out, shouldn't come as much of a surprise, as the people running the course were very tech savvy, of course, being the web developers themselves, and they switched over to online learning within a couple of days. Everything was up and running, using Zoom, having other materials online, and it worked really well. So the rest of the 11 weeks of the course was completed online. I finished that about a month ago, and since then I've been looking for work and also working on improving my skills, moving beyond JavaScript and React and things that I learned on the course to learning a bit of C# is what I've been doing this week. I built an app using a framework called Flutter, which is something that Google have helped to develop using a programming language called Dart. So that was quite an interesting experience, taking an idea that I had and making a very simple, basic app that hopefully at some point in the not too distant future I'll try and release. But at the moment it's something that I'm just trialing myself and I'm actually using. So it's quite nice to be able to come up with an idea for something, make it, and then actually be able to use it. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about that app in an upcoming episode. But yeah, so that's it. I've made the transition from EFL teacher to web developer, but I haven't got that first job yet. So it's just pretty poor timing, isn't it, with what's happened in the world? So many people losing their jobs, which makes the job market much more competitive. And I think those first developer roles, junior developer, are pretty difficult to get into anyway, because companies, of course, want people with a lot more experience. Take on someone with my skill set, you've got to do a lot of training. So they don't always want that. I mean, there are jobs out there, but they're hugely there's a huge amount of competition for them. But fingers crossed, things will turn around soon, and I can start being a proper web developer. So I'm really excited about that. It's really given me a much more positive outlook on my future, even though you could think that things are pretty dire at the moment. I think I've taken the first steps into a career path that at least is going to have some future in this world that we're moving into. So yeah, let's see. Well, I suppose at this point I should ask you guys how you are, how this lockdown scenario has affected you. I hope you're all well and that you've managed to maintain your level of employment, or maybe might have even moved into something better. When there's a crisis, there's always opportunity. So I'm sure there are some people out there who've actually moved into something better as a result of what's happened. But I know it's really difficult for a lot of people. So fingers crossed that for all of us it works out well. So yeah, that's kind of the work side of things, and where I've moved to now. The next, I guess, thing that I'd like to talk about is the interesting bit, and that is gaming. So what have I been doing recently? Well, a lot of probably the same as what I talked to you about last time I talked about gaming. I'm still playing a huge amount of this.
Take a deep breath. My vision is clear.
One down.
I downed an adversary.
Two down.
And another one down.
Healing my wounds.
Is that the best game I've ever played? It might just be. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you probably recognise it. It's Apex Legends, definitely my favourite game at the moment, and there's not a lot else that's getting a look in. There's just something about the way Apex just has this very fast kind of game loop, where you can, and most games, even if you get to the end of it, last for 15 to 20 minutes. So it's very easy to just jump in, play a little bit of it, and then go and do something else. Or if you've got a larger amount of time, it's such a good game, or at least in my opinion it is, that I can easily play it for hours and not get bored with it. But that's not to say that there haven't been other things that have got a look in. And as you can probably imagine, based on what I've talked about on this channel before, it's obviously VR gaming is the other thing I've been really interested and have spent some amount of time doing. Probably 5% of the time has been spent doing VR gaming, 95% playing Apex Legends. A couple of other little things have got a look in, but they're not really even worth mentioning. But as far as VR goes, there have been a couple of really interesting releases recently. The first of those to grab my attention and pull me away from Apex was this one. Now this is Boneworks, created by Stress Level Zero, a team of guys who, I think I might have mentioned another game that they made called Duck Season, which was very interesting from a couple of years ago. And before that, a game called Hover Junkers, which I didn't really get on with. But Boneworks, a really interesting kind of physics driven shooter game. I think it takes a lot of its influence from Half-Life. It has a bit of a strange, convoluted story about someone getting trapped inside a virtual reality operating system. And I can't say I've really engaged with the narrative that much, but exploring this operating system virtual world and interacting with it was really interesting. I must admit, some of the physics puzzles were more frustrating than fun, but I think they've got some of the best gunplay that's been put into VR so far. And they've got full body immersion. You can look down, you can see your arms, your legs, and the inverse kinematics of the frame. That is that the way the system extrapolates the positioning of your body from where your head and your hands are is really pretty accurate. I mean, it's obviously not 100% accurate. It's never going to be with only 3 points, but you know, it guesses pretty well where your body is, and it's quite a nice experience having that full body immersion within VR. Yeah, a very, very cool game. Not long after that came out, we were treated to the new Half-Life game, Half-Life Alyx. So let's take a look at that. So yeah, this is a fantastic game. I mean, you could imagine it would be. The people that brought us Half-Life and Half-Life 2, Portal, amongst others. It's so immersive. It's probably the most, well, maybe Boneworks is more immersive because of how everything is interactable or can be interacted with. But there's just a level of polish that Half-Life Alyx has that Boneworks is missing, and they have foregone some of the physics-based interactions to make things that actually work and a bit more VR friendly. It's got a great story to it. The characters are really well scripted, and it's how would I put this? The story is long enough to keep you engaged, but not too long. It doesn't feel like they shoehorned a lot of content into the game just for the sake of meeting that price that I think it was. I got it for free, but I think it was about $60, the release price for it. I'd already purchased the Valve Index controllers, and for anybody that had any of the Index kit, Valve gave it away for free, so that was a nice thing. I would have happily paid £40 for it, which I think it's selling for in the Steam sale at the moment. And it's a bit difficult to really describe how good it is being inside a Half-Life world. The beginning of the game, just the opening sequence where you look out across the rooftops of the city that you're in and look at some of the strange creatures or the strange machines that occupy this world. It's a real treat. It's something that is going to get better. Thanks to the modding community. There have already been quite a lot of mods released for this. Valve have released the software development kit, so anyone can get involved and start making things for it. And when you think about the original Half-Life and Half-Life 2, the games that they spawned, things like Counter-Strike that are still being played today, Team Fortress, which I think has still got a bit of a following, these games built on this engine and built as mods for an existing game have become phenomenons themselves, or phenomena, I should say. So I'm really keen to see what the modding development community brings to Half-Life Alyx. I think there are going to be some special games that come from this. If my coding and development skills were better, I think I'd like to get involved in making something myself. Yeah, that would be a real treat. Aside from Boneworks and Half-Life Alyx, there are a couple of other things I've played a bit of recently that I think are worth a mention. The first of those is a little game called Compound. And again, this is another really immersive experience, but in a very different way. It feels like stepping into something like Wolfenstein, or maybe an old 90s first-person shooter. And since its launch, it's just been built upon and built upon. I think it's a single developer who's made it, has added more levels, more enemies, more weapons, and just more charm to this game. Well, let's take a look. So yeah, it's a very simple aesthetic. The graphics are in no way photorealistic, but because of the way virtual reality works, you feel like you are inside this environment, and it's very satisfying to play. Obviously, it's not going to compete with something like Half-Life Alyx for the crown of VR killer app or masterpiece, but it's a wonderful, wonderful game, and the person who gave this to us, or so who's selling this to us, it's not a free title, should be very proud of what they produced. It's one of the best things I've played in VR. Another thing that I should mention, I keep coming back to in virtual reality, is what's called H3VR. Hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. It's a gun simulator. It's got a lot to it, but I mainly use the shooting ranges, and it's got, I think, over 200 guns in it. And it's just, if you've got a slight interest in firearms that I do from playing shooter games, it's quite interesting to just pop into the shooting range of this game from time to time, try out the new guns that have been added to it, and I might spend 10, 15, 20 minutes firing off a few rounds into the targets. And again, this is not a single developer, but mostly one person who's been making this game, and it's fantastic. And the amount of content that he keeps adding to it, not just new firearms, but new modes. They're always trying out new things. It's something that's just growing and growing, and really building a big user base. It's got a lot of fans, and he makes great little YouTube videos showing every time there's an update. He makes a little video showing off what the new content is, and then talking about what is coming in the future. And I think in some ways that community aspect of it and those videos is something that keeps me coming back to it. If I see a video and think, oh yeah, I want to try out that firearm, I boot up H3VR and go and try it out. Definitely well worth even the full price cost of it. It's easily worth it. One of the best things on PC VR. I think maybe unfortunate that it's not available on other platforms, but okay, so that's it from what I've been doing and I've been playing it over the last year. So not a great deal of stuff. I've barely touched the PlayStation 4. I think Spider-Man was the last thing I played on it, which was quite good. You know, I didn't love it, but the actual mechanics of being Spider-Man and swinging around the city was a lot of fun. I just got a bit bored of the story. I thought it was overly long. I suppose a lot of these AAA development houses feel they've got to cram loads of content into it to justify the price tag, but for me, it just felt like they were dragging out the story just for the sake of it. But anyway, that's just my opinion. And I think I went back and played Horizon Zero Dawn again. I've definitely played through that twice and partially played through it again, because I went through the Frozen Wilds, but I can't honestly remember whether that was something I did more than a year ago and talked about it in a video, or whether it's something I've done in the last year, but still loved it the second playthrough. And I suppose that gives us a nice segue into the upcoming gaming technology, because the new game, Horizon Forbidden West, I think it's called, is going to be released for the PlayStation 5. Unfortunately, not being released when the PlayStation 5 is, but coming sometime in 2021. So, the next generation of gaming hardware has been announced. We've seen what the Xbox Series X looks like, which I do not like the name of, and the PlayStation 5, which is exactly the name I thought it would be called. We've seen what they look like, and they're quite different looking designs, which is nice. I like the look of both of them for different reasons. I don't honestly think I'm going to be buying either of them anywhere near release. Not necessarily because I don't think they're good, because I do. I think they are interesting upgrades beyond what the current generation or the mid generation refreshes of Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro. But, well, I'm an unemployed wannabe web developer. I don't have money to be spending maybe £600 on a new console. Like, I imagine that's what they'll be coming in at, or at least the higher spec versions of them. I certainly don't have that spare cash lying around. But even if I did have some spare money, I don't think I'd be spending it on either of these, just because what attracts me to them, aside from the new Horizon game, is not really the games. I think for me, the most attractive thing is I guess you could call it quality of life features that they bring. Primarily the built-in solid state drive. I'm really interested in seeing if it's true that PlayStation 5 can load its games in a matter of seconds, and that they almost do away with loading screens. I'm skeptical, I must admit, because I'm sure, like you're old enough to have seen previous generations demoed before they release and being told wonderful things about them that didn't materialize. I mean, if we remember back to some of the features that they told us the PlayStation 4 was going to have that didn't end up getting implemented until a year or 2 years after, things like being able to pause the state of the machine and put it into sleep mode and then just come back straight into the game where you left off. Yeah, that didn't really materialize, or at least not to begin with. So excuse my skepticism when it comes to this idea of no loading, but I really hope it does happen, especially for virtual reality, because one of the things that I don't like about PC VR is that some games just take a long time to load, and it's more noticeable in a virtual environment when you're sitting or standing in what would be the construct while you're waiting for the game or the level to load. Not a really enjoyable experience, and it feels worse than it does sitting on a couch waiting for the level to load. So hopefully for VR gamers, but for everyone, being able to do away with loading screens is almost enough to entice me into wanting this. Another thing that, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be well handled on the Microsoft side of things, I'm not sure how much Sony are going to implement this, is backwards compatible. The idea of having one Xbox that can play everything from my Xbox collection, and in some cases enhance older versions, older games, and make them look not quite shiny and new, but better than they originally did, and to play better than they originally did. I'm really interested in seeing. So I might be swayed towards the Microsoft box from that angle, but then if Sony also do that, the thought of being able to play my entire Sony collection, my PlayStation collection on one machine is really, really appealing as well. I mean, I'm pretty sure that all of the stuff from the current generation is going to be playable. I mean, there might be the odd exception here and there, but I'm sure 99% of games are going to be playable on this new hardware. What I'm talking about is, the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. PlayStation 3 will be an interesting one. Emulation does exist, so I don't think there's much of an excuse for them not being able to do it. It's just whether they would want to do it. I think it's their obligation to those of us who have been supporting this brand by buying the consoles, by buying the software for 25 years now, at least with Sony's machines, to have a box that can play all of those. I can load games up on my PC that are 25 years old. Why can I not do it with PlayStation titles? What's the answer, Sony? It's not a very good one, to say that we can't do it, because you can. You can very easily, even if it's just basic emulation, give us access to the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, maybe PlayStation 3. I might forgive that because I know there are some issues about emulation there, but I still think they could overcome it. So I think that's where I stand with the upcoming generation of tech. I'd really love to hear what you are planning to do, whether you're going to be going out and buying this technology at launch, or whether you're going to wait 6 months, a year, 2 years, until developers have really started to tap into what this technology can do. We've already seen just recently with the Unreal Engine 5 tech demo that they can create beautifully detailed worlds that this is the thing that really interests me, is having no geometry pop in. It's one of my biggest bugbears in games. One of the things I hate the most are level of detail changes when you're moving through an open world. So if that can be done away with, even if the graphics didn't actually get any better in the sort of level of fidelity, if they could do away with pop-in, I think that might be enough. That and no load times would be enough to entice me into this upcoming generation. But I'd love to hear from you. So I think I've waffled on for more than long enough, and I'll be obviously making some upcoming videos to talk about other things in more detail. But thank you very much for listening. I've been going on all this time. So until next time, from my living room and kitchen to wherever you are, this is Simon signing off. Bye-bye.